Hello everyone, welcome to the Manse. I'm Lydia Ruth, and before we begin, please go to the link in the description box if you're watching this on YouTube and go and find where I have embedded it on my blog so that you can see the other things that went with it, maybe some photographs and some links and a summary of what I have presented to you here. So before you begin, let's remember appearance first and hopefully a pair of shoes. And so, you know, when you bathe and dress, it's like having a brand new canvas for the day, and it makes every day so significant, and we're not waiting for a special day to dress up, because every day is a special day, especially if you are vital, if you're alive. That's special, isn't it? And so I'll begin. I have so much to say that I have piles of books around me, and I will tell you the first thing that you might want to do after you are, or before you take care of your appearance, is to make your list. Now, I get these notebooks at the dollar store, and I like them because they're so bright, you see here, and when I put my little list of things I'd like to do on the front, and then things maybe I have to do outside the home, and grocery lists on the other side, then if I set this somewhere, I can easily find it and not lose it. And so today, ladies, I hope that you are doing well in your present circumstances, or in spite of your present circumstances, and that you have great plans for improvement and becoming more content in whatever state you're in. I have so much to show you today, I don't even know where to begin. But I'll begin with a very interesting scripture that I have been harping on for years. Let me make sure I haven't lost my place here with some of the books I'm going to read. And this one is, "Be anxious for nothing." And look at all the things you're supposed to substitute that actually prevent anxiety. And that is prayer, thanksgiving, requests to God, and then it goes on to talk about thinking on things, and direct your thinking to things that are true, honorable, just, pure, lovely, and commendable, and excellent. When you start, have you ever thought of starting, if you're homeschooling, why not start an excellence scrapbook for your children? Go and get them the little things that go in scrapbooks, and every day paste something that has beauty and excellence in it on purpose, and teach them to look for this in life. And I'm homeschooling you. I don't care how old you are. When I'm finished with you, you will be homeschooled, because all it is learning how to become autodidactic. And if you learn anything outside of the public school systems, or any school system, then you are homeschooled. And so we want to teach people to be autodidactic and to be able to figure things out and not have to constantly have an instructor sitting in front of them. And this is one of the great things, is that it loosens your mind up so that you can think and deduct. So I will read on. This is from Philippians chapter 4, a beautiful chapter. A lot of times we focus on the verse 8, which is so easy. Think on things that are lovely, good, and pure, and that have good reputation, and virtuous, that sort of thing. That's easy. But it just goes on, and it's so beautiful. Try to do it all. And you could use it as your own curriculum. I know I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In every circumstances, and any circumstances, I have learned the secret of facing plenty, and hunger, and abundance, and need. Okay, I can do all things through Him who strengthens me. This is so beautiful, to learn to handle yourself in any circumstances, whether it be prosperous or poverty. And we've all experienced it, haven't we? And there is no government plan or any kind of plan that can make it perfect all the time. Everything will eventually have its ending, and we have to learn to have strength from within. Now I'm going to, as homemakers, I think we are too poetry deficient, so I have to have poetry because I read poetry to my children. My mother read poetry to us because I noticed it balanced our brains, it balanced our thinking, it made me feel at ease and yet stable. So I want to read a poem to you. I'm still working on the collected verse of Edgar A. Guest, but I want to move on to different things, and I will tell you more about that later. Okay. Questions. Are we wrong in all our teaching that triumph lies in summit reaching? That all enjoyment earthly lies in being proud and shrewd and wise? That to be rich is to be glad, since little else from life is had? Should we not pen a different story concerning human peace and glory? Should we not to our children tell that true success is serving well? That all life's happiness depends less on wealth and more on friends? Should we not make a little clearer the fact that happiness lies nearer than youth may early guess or know for all of us on earth below? That countless pleasures close at hand are strewn at everyone's command? Should we not teach them less to grumble at modest means and dwelling humble? That fellowship with woods and seas possess endless power to please? That doing well and staying true will gladden them a lifetime through? And I think that I will post that. Or post a link to it so you can read it yourself. Now, I've been talking about clothing. Today I wanted to talk about clothing outside the home. And my theory is, if you learn to dress well in the home and you're called away or you have to go out, you don't have to do a lot to prepare for it. And so I'm going to be showing you a few ideas of how you can do that. But if you slouch around at home in grunge outfits, you'll never feel comfortable dressed a little better, and you will always feel anxious if you don't have the right clothes on. But if you start out in your home with the right clothes on, you can go anywhere. You can do anything. You always look presentable. And also, it's very important to set the standard, not to try to blend with the prevailing culture. I'm going to read, first of all, from Linda Lichter's book, Simple Social Graces. And I want to say that I don't know how long I will stay on the clothing at home issue, but there are other things that I want to do a series on, and one of them would be character in the home, and another would be, let me think, I want to do art, literature, and music in the home, the importance of that in your life. And even if your children are gone, they're grown up and have their own homes and everything, you can still continue this kind of life. And one of the things I think women suffer from when their children leave home is the things that they used to do, they can't do anymore. And I was just thinking the other day how difficult it was for me to go somewhere without a sidekick, without a co-pilot in my car, because as strange as this may sound, one of them would look down one way and another would look down the other way, and they'd say, "Okay, Mom, you can go." And they watched out for me. They knew where my handbag was. They knew where my keys were. They knew if I had set my list down somewhere. They kind of watched for me. Well, I was on my own after they were gone. And I was thinking how I had to learn to strain my neck, to look left and right. And of course, I always did watch out, but it was nice to have that extra voice. And then other things like being on time, they were very conscientious of it. They would say, we better get going because it's almost time. And all these things I had to adjust to. But if we keep doing those things, it's very good for our brain, whether or not anyone is there. You can always invent a character, you know, that you're with, or a story to go with. But I'm going to stay on clothing as long as the subject interests me, and because I'm a sewist, I like fabric, and I would like to share with you some of the plans I've made with sewing and some of the things I have done, and how much that it helps me, invigorates me, encourages me in the home. But I'm going to read from a couple of books first. Linda Lichter's Simple Social Graces. I always admired her because she apparently worked for a newspaper and was given or gave herself an assignment to find out how much better off 20th century women were than the Victorian women. And she found out just the opposite was true, on how these women dressed and how it helped them, and all the different habits and celebrations that they had, and how they were treated in society, etc. Well, I am reading the part about clothing, and this is how it was looked at. I said to you in the previous video that it was an example to society, and I can't exactly remember what I said, but the fact that it was part of influencing life, and it was part of making life worth living and raising the standard of behavior through clothing. Now, clothing is the easiest thing to change if you're in a bad mood, or things just don't seem right today, or you want to lift up your attitude. Clothing is the easiest thing to change. It takes a long time to improve character, or to get over bad habits, or defeat some problem in the home. But clothing is a quick change. It can make you look normal when you're not feeling so normal. And so I want to read from Linda Lichter's. She, in her chapter on clothing, she talks about, we will never again fuss with 20-button gloves, even though it is just these nuances of Victorian life that charm us. Now, you've seen, I recommended to you to go to Amazon Prime or one of these and watch a series by Henry James called, I'm trying to think what they were called, The Affairs of Life or something like that, and each one was named after a woman. There might have been about 13 of them. They were very clean, but they showed sometimes clues to how they lived in Victorian times. The women knew when to make a statement and exit the room without causing a fuss or an argument if they saw that they weren't going to be listened to, or if they heard insults or something like that. And that was why I was interested in that series. The other thing was that although they may have been fastening these gloves, they were also thinking and talking, and things took time. When you shove everything on and you race out the door, you don't have time to even let your mind catch up to what you were doing. And that's one of the big differences, especially in our fast automobiles. We hardly have time for our minds to catch up to where we have been, and then it's time to come home again. And so some of these things, like dressing, we ought to teach our children to dress slowly and carefully and take their time in life. It's good for their brain. It's a lot of trauma sometimes to hurry. But I want to read this to you. She said, social obligation does not demand bankrupting ourselves to mimic the Victorian wardrobe that included a specified outfit for every occasion and hour of the day, but we need to raise our clothing consciousness. We need to raise our standards. Eventually, we might even aspire to a graceful life again, to wear something simple or grand that is worthy of art for the ages. I have often mentioned, when I post art pictures from the 1800s, how the artist must have admired the look that he was painting of women promenading on the beach, or sitting around drinking tea, or even peeling apples in front of a cottage. What was it that inspired the artist to do this? What was it in the pose? What was it in the clothing? What was it in the surroundings? And would an artist stop to paint or take a picture in his mind of a woman walking by in something that she's thrown on like a trash bag today. And well, maybe they would, because art has disintegrated too, but not us in our homes, right? So eventually we might even aspire to a graceful life again, to wear something simple or grand that is worthy of art for the ages. But first we must establish shared standards for acceptable dress, like those we are trying to develop for civility and education. The indispensable foundation of that wardrobe is not a navy blazer or a little black dress, but a sense of respect. And I think that respect starts with respect for yourself as a creation of God, and a respect for God, reflection of God. We talk about glorifying God, and what that means is to enhance His creation, as far as I can see. Even more than Victorian elegance and charm, we have lost what might be called the Victorians' environmental fashion sensitivity, how people complemented and completed their surroundings with what they wore and how they wore it. How often have I said, don't ruin the view, don't spoil the view by what you're wearing. Now, I live out in the country on beautiful farmland. I live near the coast, and I think that people ought to complement the view and not spoil it with edgy looking things. Now, of course, there's often the big gravel pile and old building with the bricks falling down that it would be enhanced if a lady in a beautiful outfit stood in front of it and had her picture taken. But we should not be dressing down to go with the degradation of society. We should not be dressing down to go with the destructive look. The contrast is perhaps more obvious when 20th century sensibilities came into physical contact with 19th century environments. On a recent architectural tour through restored southern plantations, I joined parades of tourists clad mostly in shorts and t-shirts or jogging suits, tramping through those meticulously crafted treasures. Only the unpaid volunteers leading the tours seemed to harmonize with their homes, even though they wore modern attire, not period costumes. Yes, I have said this and been trashed by the haters so much. Come at me again, because I'm going to say it again. How many times have you thought that someone looked like they were homeless and poor, and maybe you passed by them and watched them go into a grand home, start a beautiful car, and drive away? We need to be more in harmony with how we're living with our homes. Now, some of us that live in the smaller homes that were run down, we moved in and we fixed them up. You don't need to dumb your clothing down to go with that environment. You need to go up, and then we need to light a candle. It's very charming to wear nice clothes in a house that isn't quite up to standard. Although they were friendly and gracious, the occasional tight-lipped look betrayed their opinions of their rumpled visitors. One docent cast of an apologetic glance at the portrait of an antebellum matron before politely giving a gum-snapping spandex visitor directions to the nearest McDonald's. Any attempt to reform the no-rules rule of our inflexibly informal dress code will undoubtedly be criticized as snobbish and undemocratic. Yes, it is. I would like for my descendants to come to my house dressed up. And I don't mean prom dresses or anything too fancy, just nice, just to look nice. And I have banned certain types of clothing, and they take it all in good nature. And one time I was reading a list of rules from an old book about clothing that you would wear to visit someone. And one of the older grandsons had heard it from another room, and he came out and he says, sounds like something like the Ten Commandments. We prefer to practice the reverse snobbery of dressing as low as we can go. That is reverse snobbery. If you ever walked into a grocery store and you're dressed kind of like I am, you get looks like, who do you think you are? In contrast, the Victorians' attentive care to dress and manners was profoundly democratic. Because it asks more of us than we usually ask of ourselves, civility is always more demanding than self-indulgence. It's easier to go down and indulge in something that's low than it is to reach up to something that's a little harder to reach. And you get that word aspire to be this and aspire to be that. Well, aspire was that top point on an old building that reached up into the sky. It was very thin, and that's what a spire was. So when the word aspire is spoken, it just means reach for something high and noble. Appearance was never a substitute for virtue. Etiquette advisors often warned that image could be deceptive. But as one who held such sentiments said, it gave an additional luster to real merit. We need to rediscover the importance of aesthetics so that civility can shine again. And as I said, it's not a substitute for character. You can't just dress up and then speak badly or walk carelessly or just have bad manners. You can't do that. But it's a step in the right. Doesn't mean you shouldn't dress up at all. Just because you haven't gotten there yet with your manners and your civility and your refinement doesn't mean you shouldn't bother with dress. Start with dress because that will help. That will encourage you and make you feel like being more mannerly. And the home is the best place to practice it. In fact, some people that ended up at home because they had to retire or their businesses were transferred to the home actually were better off because they learned all these things for the home. Now I have one more thing to read you before I shall launch into my own notes here. And that is from the book, The Lost Art of Dress. And it talks about how people had to tiptoe around as the ages have rolled forward to now, how people have tiptoed around from being proper or the word economics or something like that and had to change it all so that they wouldn't put off people who were in rebellion to good dress. And this is interesting. And they called, throughout the book, she had a group of people she called the dress doctors, and they were people who would advise how to dress. And I want to tell you that I did have a question, so if you're listening, it's someone in England asked me a question. I don't think I'm that smart to answer questions, but she asked me what she's going into the, I guess, birthing center in a hospital to have a baby and wanted to know what you would pack or what you would wear. Well, I couldn't remember, but I did remember my mother coming home from the hospital. There's a lot of home births around here, so there's not so many people going to these places, but I did remember my mother, every time she came home from the hospital, was dressed up. She had taken a special suit to wear after when she got ready to come home. She always looked beautiful when she left the hospital. I am not sure what she wore while she was there, but here's what I wrote in answer to this, a possible answer to this as to what to take. Observe what women wore before t-shirts, tights, tennis shoes, shorts, and baggy tops, and try to find out what they thought was appropriate for the hospital. But, and I didn't know this, but I remembered lists that were set by, for instance, if you were going to go to the hospital, they would send you in the mail a list of things that you needed to pack. And it would be what kind of clothing and, that sort of thing. And then also airlines, if you were to book an airline flight, and this was before the day when you could get off the plane and go straight into the building. You'd be walking on the tarmac. They had a list, too, of what you should pack to go on your airplane flight. And also, there would be ships and vacation resorts and camps that set packing lists. I'm thinking there might have been other types of packing list, but I remember a grandmother here. Her granddaughter was rather troubled, and so her mother wanted her to go and stay out in the country with her grandmother and to see if she could get her to, focus better and settle down, get away from the peer groups and the popular culture. And so her grandmother and the granddaughter went into the bedroom that had been assigned to her and opened up her suitcase so that she could unpack. The clothing was so bad, everything spaghetti strapped, everything with holes in it all over the place. And her grandmother was a churchgoer, and she said, you might as well just close the suitcase up because you're not wearing that here. So they zipped up the suitcase, and she took her to, I don't know, not a high-end place, but it could have been the Walmart or the Kmart or something. And they managed to find some pretty nice clothes that covered her, and the daughter took it with good nature too. I don't know what would happen today. Maybe they would get a cab and run away. So vacation resorts, even if you had booked a vacation at a resort or you had taken a cruise, you would get a list that would tell you what to bring with you. What would be the ideal? There'd be an evening outfit, there'd be a dinner outfit, and they would tell you how to dress. Even the catalog, Sears and Roebuck and Ward's, you could write in and get a list. They would have you fill out this form of what kind of life you lived, how many times you went somewhere and how many, what kind of life you lived. And then they would send you back. They hired someone to go through your list and send you back a list of things you could order from their catalog that would create the perfect wardrobe for your summer or for your winter. I forgot what they called these people. Also, if you will notice royal women, when they emerge from the doors of their hospital where they have their child, they're always pretty well dressed. And, we ought to be treating ourselves like royalty. The Bible says that Christians are a royal priesthood. We ought to behave more royally. I think we do in many ways, even in the manse here. We have our afternoon tea, we have our meals, we get dressed. It's very royal around here. It says they are dressed more formally than average women. They must also have a protocol or a list or someone that arranges that for them. This has nothing to do with money or with your station in life. Everybody has it within their fingertips to dress well for anything. And if you can't find something that tells you that advises you what to wear when to a hospital or something else, then you just create it yourself. You be the first. It's a void that needs to be filled. And I have told you about this many times, that every time you can't find something, it's an opportunity to create it yourself and to start an example. So it has nothing to do with money. Also, think of your children one day going through old pictures. Are you going to be happy with them seeing their grandmother in the societal clothing, or are you going to be happier with being an example in those pictures? Like I said, there are cameras everywhere. Let's be careful. Life is just too short to go around wishing things were better. And don't even think, I wish. You watch a movie and we think, I wish we were in those times. They had such beautiful clothes. We're here for a reason. We can have beautiful clothes. We can dress beautifully. And also, if your clothes are not the greatest, there are always scarves. I just go to the dollar store and I just got this one because it went with. And I find scarves fussy for housework. That it doesn't work for me for housework. It only works for me sitting down here and talking to you, or maybe in church. But I probably would wear an apron over this in the kitchen to make sure my aprons are fresh and nice. There used to be aprons for every day of the week, and you could always pick the color that would go with your outfit. So your child will one day have pictures of you in the hospital, even when he was born, and you will want them to be proud. of you and proud of them being born, and you will want them to be happy with. So leggings and shorts and other types of leg wear can be worn under skirts and dresses if the dresses are long enough. Now, I don't know what it is that's so scary about the fabric of a skirt or a dress touching your legs. I don't know what it is. The skirts just get shorter and shorter and shorter, and people say, I just can't wear, I've got to have a short skirt. The shorter an outfit is, the wider it looks to an observer. You look wider. If you wear short stuff, you're just going to look wider. And when you wear leggings and you wear jeans, you wear any kind of pants, aren't those touching your legs? Aren't they touching, your skin? Does that bother you? No. And for some reason, when it comes to dresses and skirts, I can't wear a dress, or I can't wear a skirt. When we were growing up, we wore our jeans and we wore our leggings under our dresses and skirts. And the dresses and skirts provide a wind barrier in a way. I have compared this to wearing jeans in really cold weather and still feeling very cold, and then putting a skirt on over the jeans, and there's a wind barrier there. So it just makes a lot more sense to me. Now, I wanted to start launching into dressing away from home and how important that is. So I'm going to do my own pictures here. I have often told you about these planners, and also I wanted to show you this picture here, because there's a picture of a coat here, and it's not a real coat. It just goes with this outfit here. It's probably made out of very thin material. But if you are not able, do not think you feel comfortable in dresses and skirts and stuff, you can at least get one of these. These sell quite inexpensively at the Walmart and other places, and some of them are just knit, but from the back you look like a woman wearing a dress. And so you can always throw these on over anything. And so all the clothes that I wear at home, if I have a coat like that, coats are very elegant, always get compliments on it, always feel ladylike, even if the clothing is just my everyday stuff that I wear at home, my work clothes or whatever. The coat is really really helpful. Now, I wanted to show you about planners. You know how I make these planners, and I draw a sketch and put the fabric next to it because I sew. But not everybody has to sew. But here's one that one of my granddaughters did when she was planning, and I'll try to get a close-up picture of that for you, where she clipped the fabric she wanted, and then she sketched the dress out she wanted, and she wrote, I'm going to wear this on this day, and this to this class, and this to church, whatever. Those are I called these planners, and I taught my daughter to do them. I was taught when I was really young. I don't know if it was a home economics class back in the old days, one of the last home economics classes that ever existed, where they taught you to sew and cook, and they would help you plan your wardrobe. This is the one I did. I've shown this to you several times when I was sitting down watching Wives and Daughters, and I wanted to do Wives and Daughters inspired clothing with some of the fabric that I had. So I sketched out some of the Wives and Daughters dresses and kind of modernized it a little bit, slimmed them down a little bit, and made the sleeves so that they weren't really huge, but still is inspired by has the same look. And then this is another one that I sketched out just very quickly with a spring, summer, fall, winter. But there are other ways to plan a planning sheet wardrobe if you sew, or if you would rather just try to find them, or have it already in your closet. You just need to itemize it. Is you can have mood type clothing, and that is today. My goodness, I just feel like wearing yellow today. That's what I like to do. There are certain days, even on foggy days, I will choose a certain type of clothing, because it's just to me, a foggy day is just as inspiring as a sunny day. What is that what is that song that was so popular? The God of the mountain is still God of the valley, the God of the day is still God of the night, and the God of the good times is still God of the bad times. Well, if it's foggy and it's dark, it's still just weather. And I had fog fashion. Remember one time I made all these coats for the fog. So this was seasons, weather, or it could be historically inspired, or it could be story inspired. I had one here that I thought looked like something Harriet was wearing in the Miramax Emma. And story inspired, weather, season, and just different kinds of things. And I had also, these would be everyday, all these would be everyday clothing because I make them out of cotton. The secret to the important things that we have to go to: memorials, reunions, weddings, celebrations, tours, visits to different places where you might be touring a place. I think that the secret is wear your best clothing, make sure it's cleaned and pressed, and then wear a coat over it. And that way you'll always be respectable. Now I want to talk a little bit more about the appearance and the appearance at home and how that affects appearance out there. If you'll dress up first thing in the morning, now I probably would not wear this. I'd have an apron on this, but I would put this on before I left the house if I had to go get something or do some business in town. So the Bible says to glorify God in your appearance. And also, if you have a problem with society the way it is and how dismal it all is, you can be a light and you can do what you want them to do in all things, whether it's manners, whether it's learning, whether it's an attitude, whether it's cleanliness, whether it's clothing. Do what you want others to do. The doing of it is greater than any talking that you can do. And I was wearing something the other day that I thought was just my ordinary clothing for home. I had to stop at the grocery store and get something, and it was a plaid shirt tucked into a denim western skirt that was long. It had kind of a yoke on it, and also I was wearing the little what we call sneakers, and they were also denim. And I had my hair tied up in a what do you call them? The little handkerchief, and it was also denim. And an 18-year-old girl stopped me and said, "Your outfit is so cute." And I thought, you know, they might be looking for things that cover them better. And they don't see it. You know, the stores don't have it, but you can get online and do it, and you can wear it in public, and that's the greatest influence. Now that will sink into her mind, and she'll be looking for that somewhere. She might even go to the thrift stores, or she might figure out a way to do it. So do what you want them to do. Treat yourself like royalty. The best influence is your example. Also, I don't want to depress myself. Maybe you'll have times when you're all alone at home and, quote, no one's going to see me. Don't think like that. When you walk past a window or a door or something that has a reflection on it or a mirror, you see you, and it matters. If you don't want to depress yourself, always remember the description of a movie director who wanted all of his, he was doing a movie of the 1800s, and he wanted all of his actors to wear a certain type of socks and shoe and just different things that normally you wouldn't notice and you wouldn't see. And they were saying, well, what does it matter? No one's going to know that we have this. We have this on. And he says, yes, but you will know, and it will affect the way you act. And this is the same with us. We will know. We had, back in the 50s, our clothing was so important to us. Of course, it was always made of natural fibers back. That was before nylon and acrylics entered the scene, and plastics. A lot of plastics are in fabrics now. I always look at the tag. The tags are down at this part on the inside of the blouses and skirts. You have to, the ones that say what the material is, you have to look at that. The tag in the back just tells you the brand and the size, but to find out if it's 100% cotton or whatever you're looking for, you have to look at the tags inside on a seam. And so we had such a strong attachment to clothing that, and then of course the moderns came along and said, oh, you're too fussy, you know, don't worry, I just throw something on, I'm just super casual, and they pushed us into this, they shamed us, you know, and we had such an attachment to it. Every summer my mother would order us summer clothes from the catalogs, and we got new pajamas, and they had to be pretty. We got to pick out the one and the color we wanted, and they always had things on them that were very pretty, very nice for us girls. And even our socks had to be, you know, we didn't want to wear anything ugly or rough because we lived in a rough area, and we wanted to step outside of that. Some of you might not be able to understand that unless you grew up the way that I did and my children did, that those clothes made you feel wonderful when you put them on. And even our socks and shoes were so special, and we were happy. You know, they made us feel happy. But they've taken away, the prevailing culture has taken away this wonderful feeling of how clothes used to make you inspire you. You didn't feel like sitting there and eating a great big bucket of ice cream because you weren't depressed enough. and when you got new clothes, you just were invigorated. You moved around. Let me continue reading here. Now, my skin is just the outer layer of my immune system, and that's why I don't want to poke it or tattoo it or cut it or do anything to it, because I don't want to compromise it, and I don't want to put chemicals on it, and I don't want to do things that would cause it to not protect the rest of my body or remove that protection. So that's why I don't recommend clothing that has too much chemical type makeup in it. And that also, remember, your skin must be protected. So when you dress, make sure there's more of you covered than shows. Do you remember back in the day when you used to read stories about the well-turned ankle? That was the only thing showing, and it was considered a thing of beauty, and the artists would paint women barefoot because it was considered quite daring. And the hands and the face were very important. But those were the only, and maybe the neck, were the only things that would show the skin, and that the clothing was really important. And so my skin is not my clothing, it's the part that protects my body. But we have to be careful what we put on it, and that's why clothing is so important. Now, the skin, the clothing we make should protect us from, it's a barrier. It's a barrier to all kinds of things, a barrier to weather, and a barrier to even bacteria and disease. That's why you must cover yourself. Now, for women, the most important thing about style and design is the waistline, because that is what accentuates us and shows a difference between the male and the female, is the woman's waistline. That used to be what was emphasized in patterns and drawings, and of course I sew, so I can see that. But when they stopped emphasizing the waistline, then they had to emphasize other places, and not as appealing, in my opinion. And I also think that your waistline is your source of health. If you can get your waistline back, you can regain a lot of your health. Now, for modeling, I attended a little modeling class when I was quite a bit younger. I was still in my 30s. I attended a modeling class because I wanted to, it was also promoted as a refinement and etiquette, and I wanted to do better with that, you know, and in the public, and far as, you know, speaking to people, making introductions, how to, what comments to make, what not comments to make, how to sit, how to stand, how to exit a room, and how to come in, you know, gracefully. And I wanted to know more about it. And what I discovered was that your life, your home, the grocery store you go to, everything is your catwalk. It's your runway. It's your modeling example. Your what you look like. You don't want to be obsessed with it, but at least we can raise ourselves up to a nice standard where we look healthy, where we look happy, where we look youthful. And so all you need sometimes, if you don't have nice clothes, is a jacket, a little jacket to wear over things to make you look more elegant. And a dress, clothing, hide the flaws of the body that maybe you're working on. Maybe you have flab on your arms, or flabby thighs, or, you know, fat legs, or something like that. The clothing skims over it nicely and hides all those flaws, so there's no emphasis on all those roles. And as we become more fit, even, we want to still do that because it's nice, you know. And as you get older, you know, some of us who are vital know this. Your skin gets a little crepey, and we don't really need to be showing it all off. But it's better, I think, to grow up that way, because then you don't feel so unusual. So at the same time as dressing well, don't forget your hair, your face, and your manners, and your voice. So when you feel uneasy, dress better. How many times have you been somewhere you just felt kind of, no, I don't feel quite right, but dress better. And you can dress better with what you have. The best way to serve others is in courtesy, and in dress, and in speech, and even in your own homemaking. But courtesy and dress go together. It's courteous to dress well at home for your family, for your children. And I'll never forget, one of my boys said, you know, you had this dress that had all these little teddy bears on it when I was little, and I just loved it so much. And he said he used to grab a hold of the edge of my skirt, you know, and follow me around. And he just loved the little pictures on that skirt. And what are we depriving children of when we're not wearing hardly anything on our legs, you know? And I suggest also you dress for small events that make everything an event. And for instance, you know, when the evening comes and you want to go outside and sit on one of your chairs outside, you take your evening tea or coffee out there, and put on a pretty shawl or something like that. Make everything an event. And remember, there are cameras everywhere. There's going to be pictures of you, a record of you. And how many of us at our age have gone through those old pictures and wished we had never paid attention to the fashion of the ages, because it wasn't flattering. It just made us look foolish. So dressing is a proper preparation for the day. Covering yourself will protect you from, I guess you would say, suspicious glances or things like that. I don't know how to describe it, but it will protect you from the wrong kind of attention, and protect your children too. And it will edify others. It will make them happy. And I remember I know a lady who works at the grocery store, and she says, I'm always happy to see you in line. You always, you know, wear something interesting or something like that. Sometimes our grocery stores have everything. You can get clothes now at the grocery stores. And sometimes I'll say, well, I bought this here. And you know, dressing is proper preparation for the day. A day is so special, we should realize that it can be made elegant. We don't know if we're going to have the day, you know. I would like to talk more about how to clothe yourself when you're sick or something like that. We will do that at another time. So inspire yourself. And it's better than anything professional is to experiment at home with what you can wear and how you feel and how you did your work in that outfit. Did you feel good in that outfit? People will first see your clothes. They won't hear your message. They won't hear what you believe, but they'll first see your clothing. And the way you dress affects future generations. I'm always so grateful to go through the old album that I have of my great-grandmother's and great-great-grandmother's pictures are in there. I'm just so grateful. They are covered. They are dressed. Yes, today they would mock them and say, well, look at them. What are they doing with the blouse clear up to here? Well, I can understand at my age why they did that. You know, as you grow older, those high lace necks are very flattering, and they cover all the wrinkles. But they were still dressed, and sometime I'll bring my album here and just show you. And some of you will say, why are you showing my grandmother's picture? Because now, as the generations roll on, I'm finding more people related to the ancestors. So when focusing on good dressing and pretty clothes, it's not necessary to have so many hair products and to do wacky things to your hair. It's not. Do you remember back in the day when there was a model called Twiggy that they were all promoting from England? And it was the mini skirt and the straight dress and short hair. Well, the shorter the skirt and the shorter the hair, the more makeup they had to put on her to balance that look. So she had lots and lots of makeup and eyelashes and things like that, and also other fake things, because you had to balance out that look. And so when the focus is on good dressing and pretty clothes, it's not necessary to put so much product on your hair or wear so much makeup. And the skimpier the clothes, the more important the accessories and the makeup and the hair was. Now, back in the day when the ladies wore hats, I don't think they were covering up bad hair or anything, but they did not have to do so much to their hair because they had the little hats to cover them. Okay. Now, it's very important. I need to tell you this again. What if my friends stop wearing dresses and pretty long skirts? Well, you have to stick to your standards. And when we start to try to blend in with everybody, that's when we get into trouble. And dressing changes your countenance, meaning your expression, your feelings about life, as I told you before. So we need to be good stewards of our bodies and of our clothing, and we need to think of clothing as a tool to serve others with. Now, dressing, of course, is the easiest way to change things in the world. We can't change other people. We can't change. Sometimes it's going to be harder to work on certain parts of our habits and our character For instance, it's hard to lose weight suddenly, but you could dress well while you're waiting. And this is why back in the day when women became pregnant, they could go and buy a special maternity wardrobe, and they felt special, and it was fresh, and it was clean, and it was for that time. And so people were encouraged to have different types of clothing for different types of needs and events. Now, of course, we throw on the same thing no matter what, and covers everything. And I'll never forget the woman who told me that she had, back in the day, bought tickets to this special orchestra event in a city, and her husband were going to celebrate an anniversary and go there. It was very expensive, so she bought a dress and she had her hair done and everything. And when she got there, and I don't know if it was back in the 70s or 60s, she said she was so crestfallen because everybody was showing up in shorts and tank tops, just like in the description I read of Linda Lichter's when she talked about this historical house tour. And so ladies, I want to let you go before I bore you to death, and I hope that you will learn to dress well at home, and I also hope to do some different subjects. I love literature, good literature, and I believe if you can't find any, you just write it yourself. You just make up characters. And so ladies, I also included in the previous video, or not the previous video, the previous post, the lady named Style Marion, which I ran across her on my YouTube feed, and I hadn't seen her before, and I enjoyed her forthrightness and her disappointment. She would go to all the fashion shows back in the olden days in Paris and talk about how wonderful the clothing was and how inspiring it was. And now she goes and she says it's just awful. I too have gone around YouTube looking for, how to dress after the age of 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and 80, and been very disappointed because so much of it is so heavy looking and baggy and nondescript, almost like a piece of dry toast without butter and jam. It's just very disappointing. And so, like I say, at home we have an opportunity to dress pretty and do as we like according to our mood and the occasion. So ladies, thank you for caring about me. Thank you all for coming back. I'm honored that you would come and listen. And until then, until I see you again, stay close to Christ, and I'll talk to you later.